This near-death experience story is sent by Margaret Sullivan, a 50-year-old woman from Texas who faced death and returned with an urgent message. She never expected that a routine day would turn into a life-altering event. It all started when she suffered a sudden health crisis, lost consciousness, and found herself outside her body. What she saw next was beyond human comprehension, a journey through a tunnel of light, a divine presence, and a shocking prophecy about March 2025. What did she see? Why was she given a second chance? This experience will change how you view life and the future. Margaret had never thought about life after death. Like most people, she was caught up in daily responsibilities, family commitments, and work stress. She considered herself religious, but never gave much thought to what happens beyond this world. One ordinary morning, she woke up feeling slightly dizzy but brushed it off. As she went about her day, a sudden wave of pain gripped her chest. She collapsed before she could even call for help. Her heart stopped. What followed next was something she never imagined. A journey that felt more real than life itself. As paramedics rushed to revive her, Margaret felt herself floating above her body. She saw everything happening around her. The frantic attempts to restart her heart, the panic on her husband's face, and even the worried glances of the hospital staff. But the strangest part was the feeling of calm. There was no fear, no pain, just an overwhelming sense of peace. She could see herself being worked on, yet she felt no attachment to the physical world anymore. It was as if she had entered a completely different dimension, where time and space no longer mattered. Then, she saw something that changed her perspective forever. A tunnel of golden light appeared before her. It stretched endlessly, drawing her in with an irresistible pull. She felt warmth, love, and a sense of familiarity as she moved forward. The further she went, the more she realized that this was not just a dream. This was something beyond human understanding, something divine. At the end of the tunnel, she saw a presence waiting for her. What she was about to experience next would shake her to the core and leave her with a warning that could change the world. Margaret had always been cautious about her health, but lately, she had been feeling exhausted. She ignored the signs, assuming it was just stress or age catching up with her. On the day of the incident, she felt an unusual tightness in her chest, but pushed through, thinking it would pass. As she stood in her kitchen preparing breakfast, a sharp, unbearable pain shot through her chest. Everything blurred. Her body collapsed to the floor, and her mind drifted into darkness. That was the last moment she remembered before her soul separated from her body. Her husband found her lying motionless and immediately called for help. Paramedics arrived and began performing CPR. The heart monitor showed no pulse, and for a terrifying few minutes, she was clinically dead. The doctors fought relentlessly to bring her back, using a defibrillator in a desperate attempt to restart her heart. But Margaret was not aware of any of this. She was experiencing something completely different. Floating above the room, watching her own lifeless body being worked on. She could see the paramedics' faces filled with urgency, yet she felt no fear. Instead of panic, she felt an overwhelming sense of detachment. She wasn't afraid, nor was she in pain. It was as if she had simply stepped out of her body and was now observing everything from a different plane of existence. In that moment, she understood something profound. Life as we know it is only a fraction of reality. There is something far greater beyond what we see, and she was about to witness it firsthand. The sensation of floating intensified, and suddenly, she felt herself being pulled into an unknown yet strangely familiar space. Margaret felt herself being drawn toward a tunnel filled with radiant golden light. It was unlike anything she had ever seen before, warm, welcoming, and full of energy. The tunnel stretched infinitely, yet it felt like a familiar path, as if she had been there before. She felt weightless as she moved toward it, experiencing the most profound peace she had ever known. Everything she once feared, all the doubts and anxieties of life, faded away. She felt love, not just any love, but the purest form of it, unconditional and infinite. As she traveled through the tunnel, she began seeing flashes of her past. It wasn't like remembering, it was reliving. Every moment of kindness, every mistake, every word she had ever spoken played before her. But unlike judgment, it felt like a lesson. She understood why things had happened the way they did, how every choice led to another, and how every interaction carried weight. She felt gratitude for her life, but also regret for the times she didn't appreciate the small moments. It was then that she realized this journey was not just about her. It was about something much bigger. At the end of the tunnel, she saw a magnificent presence waiting for her. The light around it was too intense to see clearly, but she knew who it was. It was Jesus. His presence radiated love and wisdom beyond human understanding. She was overwhelmed with emotion, not because she was afraid, but because she had never felt so much peace in her life. As she stood in his presence, she knew she was about to receive a message, one that would change her forever. Margaret was no longer just an observer. She was fully immersed in her life review. She saw every moment, every decision, every word she had ever spoken unfolding before her. It was not like recalling memories. It was as if she was reliving them in real time. But what surprised her the most was that she could also feel what others felt because of her actions. Every act of kindness brought warmth, while every harsh word or neglectful action carried pain. This realization shook her to the core. She never knew how deeply her actions affected others. She was not alone in this review. Jesus stood beside her, not judging, but guiding. He showed her moments where she had been selfless, moments where she had brought happiness to others, and times where she had failed to show love. It wasn't about punishment, it was about understanding. She saw the ripple effect of her choices, how one act of kindness could uplift someone for years, and how a single moment of neglect could leave a lasting wound. It was humbling, but it was also enlightening. She realized that life was never about personal success, it was about love. The review ended with one final message. Every human life is connected, and every action matters. Jesus told her that her journey was not over yet. She had something important to do. Deliver a message to the world. She didn't fully understand yet, but she knew that what she was about to learn would change everything. A warning about the future was coming, and she had been chosen to share it. Margaret stood in awe as she faced the divine presence before her. The light surrounding him was so intense that it was impossible to see his face clearly, but she knew exactly who it was: Jesus. The warmth radiating from him was indescribable, a love so powerful that it consumed every doubt, fear, and worry she had ever carried. She felt completely known, as if every part of her thoughts, struggles, and emotions were laid bare before him, yet there was no judgment, only understanding. The presence of Jesus filled her with a sense of peace, unlike anything she had ever felt on earth. As she stood before him, time felt non-existent. There was no past, no future, only the present moment filled with divine wisdom. Jesus spoke, but not in words. His message flowed directly into her soul, and she understood everything instantly. He showed her visions of the world, the pain people carried, the struggles humanity was facing, and the spiritual disconnect that had taken hold. She felt his sorrow, not because he was angry, but because he longed for humanity to turn back toward love, truth, and faith. It was then that she realized why she had been brought here. She had a message to deliver. Jesus told her that she was being given a second chance, but before she returned, she needed to understand what was coming. A significant event was approaching, something that would challenge many and awaken others. March 2025 would be a time of transformation, a period where choices would define the future. He did not speak in fear, nor did he warn of destruction. He simply asked her to remind people to prepare, to strengthen their faith, and to open their hearts. It was not too late, but time was moving fast. The decisions made now would shape what was to come. Margaret felt a wave of urgency as Jesus revealed the message about March 2025. She saw glimpses of the future, moments unfolding like a vision before her eyes. She saw people divided, struggling with confusion and fear, searching for answers in all the wrong places. There was a sense of uncertainty, as if the world was reaching a turning point, yet most were unaware of the magnitude of what was coming. She didn't see a physical catastrophe, but rather a deep shift, a test of faith, resilience, and truth. The world would not be the same after this moment. Jesus explained that March 2025 would mark a spiritual awakening, but it would not come easily. Many would feel lost, as if the foundations of their beliefs and understanding were being shaken. Some would cling to fear, while others would rise in faith, becoming guiding lights for those struggling in darkness. The choices people made during this time would determine how they moved forward. It was not about panic or despair. It was about preparation, about returning to faith and strengthening the spirit. Humanity was being called to wake up, to see beyond the surface, and to trust in divine guidance. The most critical part of the message was that this change was not meant to harm, but to transform. People would be given opportunities to reconnect with God, to find purpose beyond material pursuits, and to remember what truly matters. Jesus emphasized that fear was the greatest enemy, and those who held on to faith would not only endure but thrive. He told Margaret that her role was to remind people of this, to encourage them to seek truth, to prepare their hearts, and to trust in divine timing. What she had seen was not a warning of doom, but a call to awakening. Margaret was then shown something deeply concerning: the state of human health. She saw visions of people struggling, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. Many were sick, not just from disease, but from the burdens of stress, fear, and neglect. Jesus showed her that modern lifestyles were leading people down a dangerous path. The over-reliance on unhealthy habits, the disconnection from natural healing, and the stress of modern life were taking a toll on humanity. People were exhausted, their bodies failing not because of fate, but because of the choices they made daily. She saw how people ignored their health until it was too late. There was a disconnect between the mind, body, and soul. People focused only on fixing symptoms rather than healing the root cause. She was shown how stress, poor diet, and lack of spiritual balance were silently draining people of their vitality. Jesus explained that healing was not just about medicine, but about restoring balance in every aspect of life. The body was a gift, a sacred vessel, yet it was being neglected. He urged her to share this message. People needed to take their health seriously before it was too late. The solution was simple yet powerful. People needed to return to natural living, to listen to their bodies, and to take care of their minds and souls just as much as their physical health. She saw visions of people healing through faith, through simple changes in their daily lives, and through the power of prayer and self-care. Jesus reminded her that health was not just about surviving. It was about thriving, about living in alignment with purpose. The time to make changes was now, before the coming shifts made it harder for people to recover. Margaret was then shown what happens when people continue to ignore their health. She saw visions of hospitals filled with patients suffering from preventable illnesses. She saw people trapped in cycles of stress, relying on quick fixes rather than true healing. The most heartbreaking part was that many of these people had ignored the signs for years, dismissing their symptoms until their bodies could no longer keep up. Jesus showed her that the human body always gives warnings, but too often they are ignored until it's too late. She saw a future where health issues became an even greater challenge. The world was advancing, yet people were becoming weaker. There was an over-reliance on artificial solutions, while natural remedies were being forgotten. Jesus explained that true healing starts from within. It requires care, balance, and faith. He reminded her that the body was a temple, and when treated with respect, it had the ability to heal itself in ways most people could not imagine. But if ignored, suffering would only grow. The message was clear: take action now, before regret becomes the only option. The greatest danger was not just physical illness, but the loss of connection between health and spirituality. She saw that when people neglected their health, they also distanced themselves from faith. Pain and sickness led to despair, making it harder for people to trust in divine guidance. Jesus urged her to tell people that their bodies and spirits were connected. One could not thrive without the other. He told her that the time to wake up was now. March 2025 would not just test faith, it would test endurance. Those who took care of themselves now would be prepared for what was to come. Margaret's vision then shifted, and she saw the world from above. She witnessed nations rising and falling, conflicts brewing, and a deep division spreading across the globe. Jesus showed her that March 2025 would not just be a time of personal awakening, but also a period of geopolitical transformation. Some countries would experience economic shifts, while others would face political instability. It was not about destruction, but about change. Humanity was being tested, and the choices made by leaders and citizens alike would determine the path forward. The world was at a crossroads, and the time for discernment had come. She saw how misinformation and fear were being used to manipulate people, leading them to believe lies instead of seeking truth. Jesus explained that many would struggle to differentiate between what was real and what was fabricated. There would be voices calling for unity, but there would also be those sowing division. He urged her to warn people to stay vigilant, to think critically, and to rely on faith rather than fear. The coming years would be a test, not just of individual resilience, but of collective wisdom. Those who remained steadfast in truth and faith would be the ones who endured. Despite the challenges, Jesus assured her that this was not a hopeless time. In fact, it was an opportunity for growth. While some systems would collapse, new ones would rise, built on stronger foundations. People would begin to see through the deception, seeking clarity and purpose. Those who focused on faith, kindness, and wisdom would play a role in shaping a better future. Margaret was reminded that history had always been shaped by choices, and now was no different. March 2025 would mark the beginning of a transformation, one that required awareness, courage, and an unshakable connection to truth. Margaret was then shown that beyond the physical and political changes, a greater battle was taking place, a spiritual battle. She saw forces of light and darkness waging war, not with weapons, but with influence. She realized that many of the struggles happening in the world were not just random events, but part of a deeper conflict between truth and deception. Jesus told her that faith would be tested like never before. People would be forced to decide whether they would stand by their beliefs or be swayed by fear, doubt, and worldly distractions. She saw that many would struggle with confusion, feeling abandoned or uncertain about their path. Some would seek answers in the wrong places, turning to temporary comforts instead of eternal truth. Jesus urged her to remind people that faith was their greatest weapon. It was not about being perfect, but about staying rooted in truth even when the world seemed unstable. He showed her that those who held onto their faith would find clarity, while those who let go would feel lost. It was not a punishment. It was a natural consequence of where people placed their trust. Margaret was reminded that light always overcomes darkness, though it might feel like the world was unraveling. God's plan was still in motion. The test was not about fear, but about strengthening one's connection to truth. Jesus told her that people must prepare their hearts, not just for survival, but for transformation. Those who walked in faith would become beacons of hope for others. March 2025 was not just a warning. It was a call to rise, to become spiritually prepared, and to trust that no matter what happened, those who stayed with God would never be forsaken. Margaret's vision then shifted to financial struggles that many would face. She saw that economic instability would increase in the coming months. It was not about sudden collapse, but rather a gradual shift that would challenge many. Inflation, job insecurity, and financial uncertainty would cause stress for millions. But Jesus reminded her that material wealth was not the true source of security. Faith and wisdom were. Those who prepared wisely and lived within their means would find stability even in difficult times, while those who relied solely on money would feel the pressure more intensely. She saw how people had been conditioned to chase wealth without understanding the true purpose of abundance. Jesus showed her that money was a tool, not a savior. He encouraged people to be wise with their resources, to save when possible, and to avoid unnecessary debt. Most importantly, he emphasized generosity. Helping others during difficult times would create a cycle of blessings. Margaret saw that those who gave selflessly would never lack, while those who hoarded in fear would struggle. The spiritual law of giving and receiving would become more evident than ever. The most powerful message was that fear would drive people into poor financial decisions. She saw many acting out of panic, making choices based on temporary emotions rather than faith. Jesus urged her to tell people not to be driven by anxiety, but by wisdom. Preparation was important, but so was trust. The economy would shift, but it would not destroy those who remained grounded. Those who focused on what truly mattered, faith, family, and purpose, would find peace even in financial uncertainty. The wake-up call was not about suffering. It was about learning how to align with wisdom and faith. Margaret saw a vision of countless people walking alone in darkness, their faces filled with confusion and sadness. Jesus explained that many in the world today feel lost, not just physically, but spiritually. They seek meaning, but the noise of modern life keeps them from hearing the truth. These people aren't bad or broken. They are simply disconnected from their purpose. Margaret felt a deep sorrow for them, as she knew that this loneliness was not necessary. Jesus told her that no one is truly alone, but many have forgotten how to connect with him. She was shown that March 2025 would be a time when many of these lost souls would reach a breaking point. Some would feel overwhelmed, struggling with depression, anxiety, and hopelessness. But this moment of crisis would also be a moment of opportunity. Jesus reminded her that even in darkness, there is light. Those who feel lost are not abandoned. They are being called to something greater. He urged Margaret to remind people that they do not have to walk this journey alone. Faith, prayer, and community would be the key to finding peace again. Margaret saw that people who reached out for help, whether through faith, friends, or even small acts of kindness, would find their way back. The most powerful lesson Jesus gave her was this: no one is beyond saving. It doesn't matter how far someone has wandered or how broken they feel. God is always waiting with open arms. Those who seek truth will find it. The choice to return is always there, and the coming years will be an opportunity for many to start fresh, to rediscover their purpose, and to embrace the love they were always meant to receive. Suddenly, Margaret felt a force pulling her backward. The light around her began to fade, and she felt herself being drawn back toward her physical body. She did not want to leave. What she had experienced was more real and peaceful than anything on earth. But Jesus told her that her time was not yet over. She still had a purpose, and she needed to share what she had learned. He assured her that she would not be alone, and that even though life would bring challenges, she would always be guided. She woke up gasping for air, shocking the medical staff around her. The doctors had nearly given up on her, believing she would not survive. But she was back, and she knew she had been given a second chance for a reason. As she regained consciousness, she was overwhelmed by everything she had seen and heard. She tried to explain it to her family, but at first, words failed her. The experience had changed her completely, and she knew that she could not live the way she had before. There was a message she had to share. Margaret struggled at first. How could she explain something so profound? Would people believe her? But deep inside, she knew that it did not matter. She had seen the truth, and she could not stay silent. She began to write down everything she remembered, carefully recalling every detail. As she did, she felt an incredible sense of peace. She realized that Jesus had not sent her back to live in fear, but to encourage others. She had been given a mission, and she would spend the rest of her life fulfilling it.